Hi, I'm Keith Bachman, Danfoss CMS trainer, and in today's video, we'll be discussing retrofitting the AKSC255 to the AKSM 800A. So we're going to be reviewing the process that is necessary to upgrade from a AKSC255 controller, the legacy controller, up to the very newest 800. So we'll go to the 800 and then on up to the 800A. Now, this very first screen that we're looking at here, just simply upgrading to the 800, not to the A version. These items that we have listed here, legacy items, will not be compatible. So the list goes back to some items that resided with ECI, then other items such as the AKC 16, or rather the case controllers of 161, 164, what have you. Those are back in the days of the 55 controller. The fourth item down there is also that same IO from that 55 controller. And then there's a few items as well below, which is a Cutler Hammer. It's an older interface that they had. And then at one point, we had an RTC, a rooftop controller board that was a standalone. That is not compatible as well. Now, pre-conversion. So this means items that you want to look at before you begin the conversion. You want to get a hold of your monitoring company, make sure that they hold alarms. You want to review your hardware to ensure you have the correct parts. There are a couple different versions of the 800, the 800A, a retrofit and a non, so you want to make sure that you have the correct one. More than likely, it will be the R version, which will have the TP78 on it. You're going to review your wiring to make sure it's orderly and reusable. You don't want to start the process of dismantling and taking the wiring apart and find out that you've got issues there. So you want to check that ahead of time. Make sure that your 800A, so the controller we're going to finally go to, is at the latest version. If you're not sure, get it plugged in, hook it onto a network, and then go to the upgrade process. We've done a video on this already, and it will go out and find if there's a newer version available. Prepare for new mounting, so it's a different layout, so we'll have to make sure that all the hookups and access holes and what have you are good. Make sure that you have it at the right height for both interrogation and use of the touchscreen. You will more than likely be incorporating the HTTPS, the secure networking. Make sure that the customer is aware that because we're using the secure networking, the HTTPS, that everything that's on the network that is going to be used to access these controls is compatible. If there is a VIP graphics in the 255, you at least want to make note of that so it can be converted. It won't be convertible automatically, so it will have to be a rework. History or alarms won't carry over, so you're going to have to save them prior as well. Make sure you'll take note of any repeating alarms that have been taking place in this 255, because you're more than likely going to see them over at the 800 whenever you get converted, and you'll want to be able to acknowledge that those have been carried over. So we can see here that we go from the 255 to the 800. We need to explain that, and then finally to the 800A. So because we're doing this with USB and because of the format of the database, it is a requirement that we have to go to the AKSM 800, and that is an intermediate step, and then immediately we can go to the 800A. This is all done with a USB. This does say that you have to have the AKSM 800, a physical unit in your possession, in order to do this upgrade. So one very important step there. If we go over to the left-hand column, we have to be a 2.231 version or greater in the AKSC 255. And if you're not, you will have to do the upgrade there first. If there's no USB port inside, we're going to have to save it to a computer first and upgrade. If There is a USB. We can save everything right to the USB, and we could upgrade via that USB if those were the steps that we needed to take. Now, big suggestion that you take photos. At minimum, you need some way to refer back to this program if you're not sure once you complete the upgrade. So things such as alarms and the IO status and the overrides, these are all kinds of things that we want to make sure that we know their status before we continue on. So pictures and viewing of different screens to validate what is there before you begin the process. Now we take the USB that we've saved the database to, we go to the AKSM 800, and we're going to insert that. And at that point, we say load database. Once it's loaded, there is one other check that you need to do in the 800, which is you're going to go to the menu key. You're going to go to option number 8, which is, option 6, which is information. And you're going to look to see if items did not convert correctly and or maybe not at all. You'll see this in a few once we look at another slide or two. Then once we've done that conversion, we take that USB, we save the database, and in saving that database, we take that USB, we put it into the AKSM 800, and over there, we will now load the database. And with that process being done, we've taken the AKSC 255 and converted it up to the 800A. Now, once it's in the 800A, very important that you do an operational overview. You want to go to look, make sure all the IO came online, all the overrides have been reinstated. You're going to view every suction group, every condenser, every circuit, every calculation for the normal expected operation. If you have to refer back to your photos, yes, do so. Or if you saved it on your computer, you can use your computer to refer back. So a couple screenshots here that'll help you along the way. In your 255, you can see that here we have the version. This is 2.246. We said that we have to be 2.2.3.1 or higher, so this is fine. Here we're going to the host network, so we went to communications, and we're going to, number 1, look to see if the host network is online. Then we're also going to go to the IO network, and we're going to make sure there that we go to the list nodes. We make sure everything is online. This is all prior to you beginning. We want to verify that everything's working according to plan. And then we go to the list points. And one of the key ones under the list points is going to be the relay outputs. We want to make sure that there's no R's or M's. See, R's mean remote or M means manual. This is indication of overrides. And even though the column there doesn't spell out that it's an override column, that is where you will find it. So you're looking for any of that condition because we have to return it that way, or you have to verify why you can remove it. Sensors as well, so we're still under the IO board and points, and here we can see the reads, and notice here that we have a couple of high reads, 320, that would be an open sensor, but I noticed that they're spare, so all is fine. But you want to just do a quick look through the sensor reads to make sure that they're reading what you would expect. Here would be the board in the 255. You can see the USB is plugged into the port up here. That's where we would plug it in if it exists. If it doesn't exist, this is where you will have to save it onto a computer first and then put it onto the USB. Once you plug that USB in, this menu shows up. Number 5 right here, save database. Once it's saved, operation successful, we're ready to move on. We now come over to the 800, not the A, the 800, this intermediate step. We insert the USB. This menu pops up. We say load database. Once the database has been loaded, we go to the menu key and then 6 for the information. And it says if something needs to be looked at, it's giving you a warning right here. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to do anything, but you do need to go and look to see if it needs attention. So in this case, it's just looking at the meters, and it's just saying what the default type was. If there's something a little bit different between the 255 and the 800, this is where we might have to do a little tweaking. So it does warrant your attention. Once we've managed that, we go to the 800A. We insert the USB. When the USB is in, this highlights, and we get a drop down, and we're going to import database. You'll get a list of different options if more than one exist. Notice here it's coming from the 800, which I said was going to be saved as an S55, and you'll also be able to look at the date. That'll tell you the most current save that you've done. So with those two things, you'll quickly be able to determine which one it is that we want to load in, and then we go to import. So the final checks after we've imported it, make sure everything is secure. Host networks online for all the controls. So very important. If I have multiple controls there, we're going to have to upgrade them all individually, one at a time, but then we want to make sure at the end that they're all online as a host network. Alarms are transmitted to the monitoring company. Take a note here that it's very important that you create an alarm condition for the first test. So maybe you have a temperature alarm go out, or a pressure, or a digital, or some sort of alarm that's an actual alarm goes out. Prior or post that initial alarm, the dial-out test will work just fine for you. But for that first initial one, you do want to do a actual alarm. You're going to call the monitoring company to verify that the incoming alarm was received, and then you can tell them that it's okay to stop holding alarms at that time. Verify the history is set up and collecting. If the receiver status should be on the status screen, but it is not, then you need to go into the configuration and change this option to yes. It's something back in the 255 that the yes/no question wasn't available there, but it is now, and I think it defaults to no, so you are going to have to go in and change it to yes. Build new graphics if required. Again, this does not have to be done immediately. That's something that can come a little bit later because it will be a manual rebuild of the graphics. Check and recheck the status of the rack, the HVAC, time of day, and calcs. Virtually everything in the control does require that you do a walkthrough and make sure everything is operating, that you see cycles happening, that you see temperatures where they're supposed to be, conditions the way that they are expected to be. And then check the alarms and refer back to the 255. This is where I referenced if I got a repeating alarm that is possibly happening and it shows up with this new control, it's understandable why it's there, because it has been repeating. And that should get you converted from a 255 to an 800A with no problems. Thank you for watching our video. And for more documentation and videos on the System Manager, please visit danfoss.com/supermarket support.